We've all often heard the phrase, once a teacher, always a teacher. However, at the heart of every educator's mind and thinking is the desire to achieve advancement. And this is certainly true of Sonia Lewis. She was a teacher for over 20 years before she got the entrepreneurial itch. For Lewis, it all started when she was 7 and refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance because she didn't see liberty and justice for all, especially those who looked like her family and who were in her community. Earning degrees in history, psychology, and a master's in education also played a fundamental role for her wanting to start her business known as ASCRIBE Consulting, LLC and EDIFY Humanity, 501c3. She's on a mission to rectify the harm of racism and is unflinching in asking the tough questions, facing uncomfortable truths, and building on equity-driven outcomes. Lewis joined me this week to engage in conversation about how we close the gap of racism in education, provide more opportunities for equity and equality for all students of all races and abilities, and how we can all live and thrive in the same educational atmosphere. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So Sonia, if you're ready, I'll welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn all about the difference that you're making in education. Great to be with you today, and thanks so very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It is my honor, as usual, anytime that I am on someone's platform, talking with them and them asking me questions. I am also in the process of learning about you.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I always say that life is a constant game of networking, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So I want to know all about you as an individual. I know that you've spent some time in education and it was important to you to start a platform where you were allowed to sort of give kids the resources that they weren't getting in school. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about the great work that you do.
Absolutely. So I would say that my journey, when I start to begin to look at education and educational inequities, I was very young. So at age 7, I challenged my elementary school teacher, and I just wrote a book about my 7-year-old self. But I went to school one day and I said that the Pledge of Allegiance does not apply to all students or in all people in all communities. So I don't want to say it. And I got in a lot of trouble behind it. Flip ahead to when I was 18, I had a teacher who told me, now, mind you, I'm in all advanced classes and things of that nature. And I had a teacher who told me because I was choosing to attend an HBCU, a historically Black college and university, that I was practicing reverse racism. I grew up in a household where my parents divorced early, but both of them loved me immensely and wanted to make sure that I was provided with every opportunity. My mother remarried, um, and if it were not for my bonus father, who was, by the way, a quadriplegic, um, learning empathy, learning how to care for one another, learning that we don't all come to the table with the same needs, and being able to figure out a way to provide for everyone and what their needs are probably is what propelled me to go into education. I spent a little less than 20 years in the classroom teaching history. I have a degree in history and psychology from Spelman College. And I have been a business owner for the past 13 years doing educational equity, leveraging anti racism, leveraging disability rights, leveraging equity when it comes to women and foster youth and LGBTQ plus individuals. That's what equity is all about. And if you read my hat, it says equity is my love language. I live that every day.
Yeah, Sonia, I spend most of my adult life and days promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. You brought up being raised by a spastic parent, and I was actually born with what's called spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy,
Okay.
which I'm sure you know all about. So I'm curious, as an educator, how do you think we close the gap when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion for students with disabilities as well?
Absolutely. I think really and truly it's about identifying one, what the needs are, right? If we can meet the needs of the most disenfranchised, the most vulnerable student, if we meet those needs, we can meet everyone's needs. And so imagine, stacking the deck and the card that's at the bottom and you pulling it from the bottom, everybody above is getting impacted. So you can't pull that card from the bottom of the deck without the entire deck feeling the impact. And that's what I equate to educational equity. So I don't care what the need is of the students. I believe that if you meet their basic needs, right, then everybody's needs are going to be lifted. And so it's a matter of listening. It's a matter of showing up and allowing the difference to be whatever the difference is and not making it a roadblock or a barrier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you had a transition from educator to entrepreneur, so I'm wondering if you can tell me all about it.
Yeah. I was forced several years ago to become a whistleblower. I had discovered that the principal of the school where I was running a program was misappropriating funds from my program. And he gave me an ultimatum. He said, told me to sign off on this documentation or that I wouldn't be welcome to come back and teach at his school. Now, the saving grace in that situation was I had tenure and the district couldn't fire me. But I had choice in what school assignment that I had also. So they couldn't just assign me anywhere. Because of that incident, I suffered a little bit of depression and anxiety, which are mental health challenges. I sought therapy. It was a very challenging period because I was adamant about the situation and not being bullied to do something that was, in my opinion, going to impact my integrity. And so, after going through negotiations with that school district, I just said, my students, my parents, other fellow colleagues are calling me to do this work. I should set up a business to continue to do this work. And so the transition wasn't an easy transition. It came with lots of angst and trying to maneuver. I never in my wildest dream imagined being a business owner. Um, but it has been the most freeing and liberating experience in my life. And I could never, ever, ever go back to having a boss ever again in life.
It's always fun to give yourself your own directives when it comes to work, isn't
Yes,
it?
yes, I love it. And I love being the
I'm sure.
boss.
I'm sure you do, and I know at the core of everything you do, it's all about creating a safe space for all people where they
Yes.
feel that they belong and that they're included. So tell me why diversity, equity, and inclusion, in a more broader sense, is so important important to you?
Absolutely. You know, I look at teams, organizations, nonprofits, corporates. I don't care what the team is, I don't care what the industry is. There is a push and pull factor in every situation. There are the gatekeepers and the folks that hold the purse strings, and then they're the worker bees. And I firmly believe that no organization can be successful if the worker bees are not appreciated. And so we have to get down to the root of, do those worker bees feel like they belong? And belonging is, in my opinion, a sense of desire and wanting to show up and be your best every day. Not dredging to go to work because you got a job or it pays the bills, but actually wanting to be there and wanting to impact the bottom line. And I tell every leader of organizations, every business owner, every corporate executive, I tell them, if you don't know what the people who are getting paid the least amount, the people who have the least amount of power, and the people whose voices are not lifted, if you don't know what their needs are, you're missing the mark, because 9 times out of 10, those individuals can tell you where the gaps are, and they can tell you whether or not they like coming to work every day. And I truly believe that if the folks in those positions like coming to work every day, like being on your team every day, it will impact your productivity, your bottom line. And so that's what I help organizations do. I don't consider myself a DUI expert in the sense of going in and doing 1 day transactional trainings. I partner with organizations where we are intentional about shifting the climate and culture within that organization so everyone feels like they belong, so everyone's needs are being met, and everyone feels included.
Absolutely, and you also consider yourself sort of a woman change maker. So I'm wondering if you could dive just a little bit deeper onto what that means to you.
Now, it's funny because I get asked all the time, Sonia, why did you start your business? And really and truly, it was out of necessity, right? It was that push and pull factor of, what am I doing with my life, and how am I impacting others? The thing that folks ask me about my business structure is always interesting. And someone told me probably about 3 or 4 years ago that, I consider you a woman change maker. And I never thought about it this way. I just feel like I see an issue or a problem or a something that can be addressed. And I show up and I try to help as best as I can, right? But my business, as I am the owner, is a woman owned business. I have managed to hire my mother and my daughter. So we are a multi and intergenerational business that we run this company. And at every hire that I've had since Ascribe started has been a woman. And so I really believe that African proverb that, when you teach a man, you teach an individual, but when you teach a woman, you teach a village. And so I am trying to spread as much love and opportunity as I can, because I firmly believe that women make a huge difference in this world, and we're not given enough credit for it. So I'm very honored that this newspaper organization wanted to say that I was a woman change maker, and I just hope that someone else is impacted along the way as I come and show up every day to do this work.
Absolutely, and I know that women equality is very big for you. So tell me, how do you think we can get more women excited about entering the field of entrepreneurship?
You know, that's a very interesting question. So my profit work, my business work, is Ascribe Educational Consulting. I developed a nonprofit because at the core of me, I will never stop desiring to be a teacher, right? And so my nonprofit, Edify Humanity, we do just that, Kevin. We go in to virtual spaces and work with students as young as 5, as old as 18. And we inspired through a curriculum that shows them the possibility of what all of the fields girls can go into. So I bring in women and black folks and indigenous folks and LBGTQ folks and um, able-bodied challenged folks, right? I bring folks into that space so that children can see what the possibilities are. And so when it comes to young girls in particular, I think the important thing is to make sure that they know that they have a voice and they should trust their voice. It's a hard thing that when I think about my 7-year-old self and the fear that I had of going home to tell my mom that I had made this decision and that a teacher was then punishing me for the decision that I made. Um, it was a hard pill to swallow because my mother is very old school and she was very much of the mindset children should be seen and not heard, right? We've all heard that old adage. I believe I changed my mom's mind when I was 7 years old. And she believed, and the way that she raised me was that children should be seen and heard, and that we should ask them more often when they're able to understand, gauging their level of understanding, what they feel they need in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me, I know that you're big on power and influence. So what do you think that means to you on a more broader scale?
Power and influence isn't about a dollar sign. I can tell you easily what it isn't. It's not about money. It's not about a position. It's not about where you come from. It really and truly is about the lives that you are impacting. It is about what would someone say about you when you leave out of that door, right? Would someone recommend you to another person? Does someone call you in their times of need? That's what power and influence means to me. I want people around me who I see every day who are paying attention to the needs of the unhoused, paying attention to the needs um, of kids who don't have, who legally can't, decide what their fate is. The needs of those who are disabledly challenged. I want to be able to empower those people to see the possibilities of possibilities. Like there isn't this cookie cut um, little square box that we all fit into. I for from a young age, I considered myself an alien, and an alien to me is just someone who's different. And I believe that different people change the world. And we have to lean on our differences in order to make that change happen.
Absolutely, and I know in your latest project you're looking to make changes with organizational leaders and corporate executives who are trying to get racism and increase equality
Yeah.
within the organization. So I'm wondering if you could tell me all about your latest project and how it's going for you.
Yeah, it is going extremely well. It is the first time in a long time that I've offered a new service to our lineup of services. And so we call it EMS, like, the emergency, if you're having an emergency and the ambulance has to show up, right? So EMS is equity mindset shifting. And so we sit down with corporate executives and we give them, the language so that they understand when an employee or a team member is coming to them with an issue, that they don't microaggress them, that they don't gaslight them, that the implicit biases don't show up, and that they are not considered, racist at the end of the day, right? What it does for an organization when you have a corporate executive or an organizational leader that steps up to the plate and says, I want to be here in this process learning with my team, right? While we recognize that racism has impacted every aspect of our society, I want to do that with you. I think that the people on the team will, with will just welcome a leader being authentic in that moment and hold that leader accountable to the work, right? Because it's so easy for a leader to say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to hire a corporate trainer to come in like Sonia and lead my team." But if the leader is not willing to learn about what needs to change, then change won't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm curious to ask you about how you define personal and professional fulfillment. How does that look for you?
The lines get crossed all the time. My husband reminds me, you're not at work right now. You're not at work. My kids remind me, you're not at work. When I go on vacations with my family and my girlfriends, they say, "You're not at work. You're not at work." Sometimes I don't know how to turn it off, right? I can tell you that my sister celebrating her 45th birthday a few years ago, we went to New Orleans for the Essence Festival, and we had decided that we were going to go on this alligator boat ride. And we were paired up with a group of Filipino girls who were also from California. And it was fun, right? We were laughing, we were having drinks, we were letting our hair down, enjoying the day. One of my cousins made a comment that I thought was just a tad bit irresponsible and racist. And yes, oftentimes people ask me, well, as minorities, can we be racist? Racist in the grand scheme of, can you change someone? Can you take power from? Can you withhold money? No, we can't be. But we can definitely be prejudiced and use our words to hurt people based on race. And so one of my cousins made a comment, and I went home that afternoon, and the young lady who was sitting next to me, we had discovered that we had taught at the same school in San Francisco, just years apart from each other. So we knew people in common. And she was a teacher, and I just was so like, I was so embarrassed that my cousin had made this comment, and I was apologetic. I was like, I am so sorry. She's a little bit tipsy. Please, all of us don't, that doesn't reflect all of our opinions. And she was like, no problem. I understand. I got back to my hotel room that night and I posted something on Facebook. My cousins later on read it, and they all converged upon my room and were like, Sonia, you are off work. You cannot bring your work to our vacation. And they were really pissed at me that I had posted this post. I didn't name anyone's name. I didn't try to embarrass anyone. I thought for me that it was a teachable moment. So when you ask the question, personal fulfillment versus or professional fulfillment and the success of, sometimes for me the lines get extremely blurred, and I don't know how to turn off the professional. But I will tell you this: my husband, my children, my family knows that I love them. They know that we can have fun, but they know also that I have a tool set, right? I have tools that I can bring out at any time and say, if something happens, if we see this, we have to stand up and we have to say something about it.
Absolutely. And, as a lifelong teacher, which I'm sure you identify yourself as, I'm curious to ask you about getting through the pandemic and really valuing what's important in life. How has the last 2 years sort of given you a perspective on what's important in life?
Oh my goodness. So my youngest four children were home during the pandemic with me, and I've always run my business from home. And there were times where I wanted to escape because we were all home together, but I knew that I couldn't. And so again, I had to put on my educator hat and I had to say to myself, what do they need in this time? And so that was a time that it gave me huge perspective with where the gaps are in education. It gave me huge perspective what my individual children's needs are in a very broader, wider picture, like right in front of my face. I could not ignore that one child's needs were very different from another child's needs. And it also gave me a greater perspective and appreciation for the business that I was attempting to build, right? So we're talking about March of 2019. I had at that time seven public speaking engagements set up through that was going to take me through September. And within a 10-day period, all of them were canceled. And I was saying to myself, oh my gosh, my business is going to tank. I am doomed. What am I going to do? And within a 48-hour period, this was a Friday the 13th in March. And it always happens on a 13 is my favorite number, and it just happened that way. But I went into what I call the dungeon, and I created um, three new programs that I can do virtually to serve my clients and community. And so the pandemic gave me lots of perspectives, but it also showed me the tenacity that I didn't know I had. It forced me to be more resilient than I had been showing up in spaces. And that's how I like to show up. I like to show up like I'm one ready to go and prepared, but I also like to show up very unfiltered and unflinching and unapologetic about the work that I am doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this situation that we're all in really brings to bear the importance of human connection, doesn't
Yes,
it?
yes. And so immediately when the pandemic hit, I was very concerned about friends and family who I knew would be isolated. And so I began to use, because I had a Zoom, for my business, I began to set up calls with each of my different influence groups. And so my girlfriends and I would have a Thursday night, cocktail on Zoom. My college friends and I would reconnect. My high school friends and I would reconnect. I had my husband's side of the family, we would connect, and my mom's side of the family, and we would have these, like Zoom parties where we would just, let our hair down, place you could even play virtual games. We figured out how to manage this pandemic. What I will tell you is that I was extremely concerned about individuals who had special needs, like they were physically or like you have disabilities, but they're physical ailment disabilities where people can be compromised. And I didn't want that to be a reason why you don't connect with people. Um, I suffer with chronic bronchitis and asthma, and I have experienced in my lifetime being hospitalized, and I had a little bit of a panic at the beginning of COVID because I was like, if I get sick, I might die, right? And so I wanted to stress to my children. My 18-year-old at the time was home from college, and he was itching at the bits to get with his friends, and it was really alienating for him. And we discovered that he was sneaking out of his bedroom window to go and hang out with friends. And I had to have a really heart to heart with him that if mom gets sick, she can end up in the hospital and die. And I need you to understand that you can't bring this back into my house. And so having those very, poignant conversations with your young people, with your family, with your circle of influence, I think was very important for a lot of people at the height of COVID. We've managed, it's been 2 years, and thank God I haven't gotten sick. But I know how to take the precautions to like manage my interactions with people as well.
Absolutely. And my final question for you today has to do with your personal or professional legacy and how you think you might want that to be defined.
Ooh. Well, as a Black woman, oftentimes we are asked to show up and show out for everyone else. And so, my personal legacy, I want it to be one around integrity and character, but I also want it to be like when I think about the women who came before me, they didn't have an opportunity to rest. They didn't have an opportunity to experience self care. If I think about Harriet Tubman or Fannie Lou Hamer, for example, they were go, go, go. And I have lived my life as a go, go, go person. Like there's always something, some work to be done. But I've always also realized in this last couple of years is that my life is valuable, and the things that bring me joy and happiness need to be centered more often. So my personal legacy is one of self-care and taking care of self. And my professional legacy is making sure that we are creating an anti-racist future. That is what I will live to the day I die. And I'm hoping that I'm passing that torch not only to my children, but to other folks in community.
Absolutely. And Sonia, very quickly, tell me if people want to get connected with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Best way to do that is on going to my website, which is ascribesuccess.com. That is ASCRIBE success.com. And you can use that Ascribe Success to find us on Facebook and Instagram as well.
Fantastic. Well, I really want to thank you for your efforts in promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you know, we share a mutual passion in that
Yes.
regard. And anytime I get to have a conversation about promoting DE and I'm excited. So I want to really thank you for taking some time out of your schedule on this Thursday to engage in conversation with me. It's most appreciated.
Absolutely. And if I can leave you one your listeners with one thing, the book that I've written, Monsters and Aliens, comes out February 13th. And I encourage folks to think about this question for yourself. This is not a plug for you to go and buy the book. I just want people to think about what one thing And you might have more than one, but what one thing when you were younger do you wish you told the world, but you were scared to speak? And so I want you to think about that and then apply that to the young people in your lives and really think about their voice because it's important. They are the future.